join me in welcoming Marcy Comer, CMO of Eagleview, to the show. Marcy, are you ready to get radically transparent with me?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Let's do it. So, Marcy, I have to ask, what is keeping you up at night professionally these days?
I am extremely worried about AI, and maybe not for the reason that most people are worried about it. When you look at your feed on LinkedIn, most people are talking about, will AI take my job? But for me, I'm worried more so about what it is that's out there that's going to work, that my competitor is going to use before me to capture that green field. So throughout sort of the course of my career, there's been a variety of technologies that have come up from seemingly nowhere. And the people that won and my competitors in various industries were the ones that embraced it early, did some experimentation, failed, won, and then plowed resources into it. And it's really about having sort of that mindset of we're going to constantly be learning, constantly be trialing new things, and we're going to constantly be failing, because if we're not failing, we're not trying, right? And sort of trying to stay on that sort of earliest side of the bell curve, so that we can win.
Spoken as a true marketeer. I feel all of us are always learning. Our industry is rapidly changing, and we've always got to stay ahead. So, listen, I want to jump in and speak a little bit about Eagleview. And maybe, I thought about this. For those listening in who may not have heard of Eagleview, what is Eagleview and what is the value you bring to your customers?
Eagleview is first and foremost the premier aerial imagery company. We have the best aerial imagery around, and we fly fleet of planes over North America, and we're able to capture 1 inch GSD imagery of properties. So we have extremely high coverage rates, 95% of the United States. And what that means is that we're able to assess sort of properties. And when you have really superior imagery, you're able to extract superior data. And so that's the sort of number two of our mission, is to have world-class imagery, aerial imagery, and then also provide world-class data attributes. We serve customers like insurance carriers for underwriting and claims adjustment, government for tax assessment, and disaster response. We just flew Kerr County, which is about 2 hours from my home, the tragedy that just happened there over July 4th. And also roofers, right? So they need to understand the measurements of a home so that they can properly order materials, and then also estimate for the homeowners and give them a really strong bid.
I
But
think,
it's a fascinating company. And
yeah,
we also just
say.
rebranded.
Totally. I mean, congratulations on the rebrand. And I have to say, as you're describing this technology, it has to be one of the cooler technologies we've had on the show. So really interesting stuff. So when I'm thinking about Eagleview, I know you're always looking to expand into whether it's existing markets or look for new opportunities. And it sounds like Eagleview is quite niche. How do you ensure you're identifying as CMO the right opportunities and staying ahead of those potential gaps?
So this is my number one challenge. So we have a strong foothold. We're the market leader in several big industries. And when we think about sort of innovation, not just on the product side, but on the marketing and the messaging side, you really have three areas that you can compete in. So core, your existing industry, your existing customer set; adjacencies, so maybe it's a different customer or a slightly different use case within those existing industries; and then there's true disruption, right? So we're going out beyond those industries, identifying new use cases that maybe we haven't even thought of, or the customers haven't thought of, that we can solve for with our products, and maybe potentially new products. And so I have marketers that own the big four industries that we serve, and they own sort of those that messaging and positioning. But I also have marketers on staff that own big product groupings. So like data, for example, Eagleview One, which is our newest entry, and even developer. And they think about it more broadly, more horizontally. And we have to then create messaging, create sub messaging, and then figure out what sticks and figure out what inbound we get that then can help us create the next generation of revenue.
Absolutely. I mean, it's truly something I think when staying ahead of potential gaps as a market leader, I would say you consistently have to be one step ahead of everyone else,
Yeah.
which is certainly would keep me up at night. I also know in the industry that experimentation is one of your greatest strengths, and we'll get to contingency later on, I'm sure.
Okay.
But as such a risk taker, and I think as a marketer, that can be quite frightening and thrilling all in one. Can you share how you approach these early experiments, especially in your industry, when mapping out budgets or prioritizing your initiatives? How do you know how big of a risk to take? What's that, what's going on inside of your head as you're making these decisions?
I sit on the executive leadership team, so I know the big bets we're taking as a company, and I start with that. So Eagleview one, we have put a lot of resources behind it for this year, which means that I've got to land that plane. And so the bulk of my resources from a marketing perspective in terms of people and dollars are going towards that. I've got to figure out where I can get the dollars back first, and then we can sort of like build in sort of these experimentation paths to figure out sort of like what the B and C revenue pipeline is, and it's just really all about fast. One of the things that I love about working here is that we have a lot of trust in each other across the organization, and so as a marketer, you probably know you've worked for organizations where you've got to check every, one, two, three to
Verify.
else. And I don't necessarily have to do that as much. There's a lot of trust, communication. We know the ins and outs of what's happening at the sales level, at the product level, and we're empowered to kind of run and see what sticks. And with the feedback loop coming back, constant reporting and sharing, and that's what continues to build that trust. So for me, it's all about speed and then transparency in what we're doing and the results that we're seeing.
That's fantastic. May each organization have that level of trust. It
I'm
sounds.
staying here forever. I'm telling you.
There you go. So I want to shift for a moment to events because there's been a lot of chatter all of 2025. I know events are back and budgets, put towards events, and we know that events are still quite valuable for B2B marketers. With you guys attending 50 plus events, and that might be like even on the small side, a year. How do you prioritize and determine the value of the events you participate in? Which ones you're participating? How can you give us a lay of the land?
Yeah. So when I stepped into this role, we didn't know anything, and we were just like sort of sales. What do you want to attend? That doesn't work for me. We implemented technology and incentivized the sales team to scan every badge. So we use eye capture, which is like a badge scanning software. And we can use it at almost every event, unless they say that we can't, and we have to use theirs, and then we figure out another path. And then we say scan every single badge, and then we track pipeline opportunities and close one from that. Then we get a true ROI for every single trade show because we have expenses plus we have revenue.
Hmm.
And then we make next year's decisions based on that.
Oh,
So we literally will set the sales team down and be like, okay, trade show number one was a banger. Trade show number two did nothing for us. In fact, we lost money. So we are going to not go there or have a significantly lower presentation, a smaller booth size, and redeploy those funds somewhere else, maybe not even trade shows. But it's super easy conversation to have, and they get behind that. Now, what happens is 1 year after you do that, they start scanning every single person that walks past the booth, and so your trade show ROI starts looking really bad. So you have to sort of keep that history in mind to understand that you incentivize the behavior that you wanted, but there's unintended consequences for that behavior. And so you have to take that sort of qualitative information into account when you make your decisions for year three.
it's really interesting. I mean, that's some serious sales and marketing alignment to have those discussions every year. And I think every company should take note. But I can imagine, right, that brings up some other challenges. Which also
Mhm.
leads me into when we talk about events. I mean, there's literally a million and one things that could go wrong with events, and the show must go on, right? You have your booth, the show must go on. But whether it's weather or, I don't know, unexpected factors, travel issues, you name it, it can really make, I think, event planning quite cumbersome because you really can't predict all the possible risks that could go wrong, especially with all these shows you're attending or events rather. How do you navigate these challenges and ensure ROI? Is there anything beyond these, these collaborations with sales and how you're choosing, but is there anything wider you can share on how you navigate these challenges?
You have to roll with it. So, I mean, the first and foremost thing is you hire a professional to do it. Like events cannot be owned by someone fresh out of school. It seems easy on paper, but it's not. There are trillions of moving parts. You're talking to salespeople, right? That in and of itself is very draining. And you have to deal with unions. You have to deal with getting the stuff that not arriving on time. And what do you do? And you gotta hire a pro, someone with experience to own it. And with that, it gets sort of all taken care of. I have an exceptional two people on my team that do it. We have to split. We can't, one is just not enough for 50 trade shows, obviously. And they determine sort of based on their experience, what show do I need to be at? And generally it's the larger ones with the bigger booth size, the more the moving parts, maybe a party. Also parties, if you have a party, you got to have someone there.
Yeah.
That's 100% required. And they have checklists. So they have like these 150 point checklists that they go through for every single show. They have pre-show meetings with the sales team to align on goals, talking points, collateral that we're sharing, and what the expectations are from all from what you're wearing to how you behave, and then what you're talking about. What time you got to be where and when, and there's consequences for the people that attend that don't follow those rules. And also you can't attend unless you've got 3 meetings booked. So you're already driving the results that you want just by saying you can't come unless you do this action.
You are the queen of contingency, and I'm so glad that you called this out. Because when you do an event, this is so important. I think a lot, like you mentioned, people may, especially, whether it's sales or, other members of the team, it's a fun event, right? But they're not, they're there to work. And I think everything you've just called out, there's so many moving parts.
Mhm.
And I think that we need maybe to borrow your playbook. I mean, do you write about it? Do you have a playbook anywhere? Because I think you're spot on. The amount of detail that needs to go in, and like a sales cycle, right? A sale is creating a well-oiled machine. A salesperson understands that you do X, Y, and Z to get to the end result. And I feel it's the same with shows, right? You have to build this well-oiled machine to be able to get the outcomes, and it feels like that Eagleview is doing it quite well. So yeah, do you have everything like written down? Like how many months in advance, or do you like in the beginning of the year you know all the shows you're going to, or does it
Yeah.
pop
We
up?
already have the list for 26.
That's amazing. That
Yeah.
is amazing. What a team. Um, what a team. I mean, 20, it's like it's crazy. So you also, I know when it comes to budget, you mentioned it a few times and being able to find the dollars and kind of reallocate the budget from lower performing dollars to higher performing opportunities. And with 2026 all ready to go with the shows, what's your process for evaluating and optimizing this balance in budget and as you go as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's a confounding factor in that, your budget may get cut. And
Exactly.
so the thing about trade shows specifically is that you pick your booth space at this year's trade show. So some of that cost is already baked in. And then you got to figure out like how you can cut if you need to cut is you have fewer attendees. You may be able to negotiate the size down, for example, or maybe you don't host as big of a party or something like that. So you have like sort of these levers with various timeframes on them that you can move. But trade shows are pretty restrictive, right? Because you do have to plan them so far out. But what we do is we sort of well, oh gosh, it'll be in like a month or two. We'll start looking at results from, that just kills me.
It's crazy.
Um, we'll start looking at all the ROI that we have from the various channels by business unit, by product line, because we capture all of that. and then we'll start making some sort of calls on how we're going to reallocate for next year. And then we sort of I just sort of like say, hey, Krista, you own events. Here's your bucket of money. What do you think you should do? And then she comes up with what she thinks is the plan. She presents it to, me and her sales leads. And we sort of like barter and talk through everything that we have to do. And then we just sort of move forward. And then if something happens, like, oh, the board is saying, nope, you get to reduce your budget by 15%, then our levers are reduced, right? Because we're down the time frame, and we got to figure out, paid is a nice place to cut. You can always cut that the day before,
Yeah.
uh, and that's typically what gets cut the most, frankly, because I don't 100% believe anything that Meta is telling me. I don't know. I don't think that anybody should. And it's a nice place to see instantly, sort of, if what you assume to be true is actually the truth.
Yeah, I think that's pretty well said. I have nothing to add there. So listen, we're wrapping up. I have three more questions for you. The next one is around advice. You are quite seasoned. Listening into this interview, I mean, I just want to jump on your team for events and just watch how you run this machine because it's fascinating, but also very inspiring. What advice would you give to fellow marketing leaders who are looking to embrace the experimentation side of leading a marketing function while also managing the risk efficiently?
Experimentation begins with curiosity. And so you cannot be a marketer today unless you have a love for learning and curiosity. So you start there. Read everything that you can, follow the people that are doing it, and pick out one or two things that make sense for your business and just lean into it. Like, your CEO is going to fire you if you are not doing this. If you were just running the same old playbook, he or she will not like that, right? So you need to be embracing that. And if you don't love it, figure out a way to make it fun, because it's required. And so you need to experiment relatively quickly, find out what the results are, must have be able to show results, and then land on sort of your next step.
I think that is some of the most solid, radically transparent advice anybody has ever given on this show and has said it so straight to the camera, but it couldn't be more spot on. So, looking back on your career, I mean, you're quite a force. What's one key insight that you've gained that you think, besides what we just spoke about, right, with it, which is always be learning, trying new things, don't you dare try the same playbook, over and over again. What's one thing critical for today's marketeers to be having their eye on?
It all comes down to trust internally. So you need to become friends with the people that matter. And you become friends with them by always delivering for them. So you have a constant conversation, you find out what's important to them, and you deliver something that they need. And it could be customer facing, it could be internal, but you need to become that trusted partner so that they give you back the trust that you need to do what you're an expert at. And it'll just make your life so much simpler. You won't be anxious, you won't be worried when you fail. You'll be able to have sort of this open line of communication that will it'll make the train drive so much smoother for you.
I love it. I really love it. Last question for you. So, in the true spirit of our radically transparent podcast, we've been asking this question for 4 years to every guest. So, feel free to get as wild as you want with the answers. But what's one thing that you can tell us about yourself that we actually couldn't learn about you from your LinkedIn profile?
I love these things called boring facts. I think it's even more fun than fun facts. My latest boring fact that I've been using is I don't use a top sheet.
Like, what's a top sheet?
On your bed,
Okay.
I just go flat sheet duvet.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm like, what's a top? I don't use a top sheet either. So twins. That's amazing. Well, that's a very great boring fact. That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Marcy, for joining Radically Transparent. If anybody wants to speak Eagleview or speak more about events, contingency plans, or just pick your brain, where's the best place that somebody could be in touch?
LinkedIn is great. I think I'm LinkedIn.com top CMO. I got that keyword. So
Fantastic.
um, reach out there unless I'm kicked off, which is a big possibility. So
Oh no. All right. Well, Marcy, thank you so much for getting radically transparent, and we look forward to having you back again.
thank you for having me.